Join me now from St. Petersburg, Florida, political activist and host of the Fleccas Talks, Austen Fleccas. Fletcher, thank you so much for joining me. I'm bringing you on because I have a feeling you know a lot about conservative censorship. Is this something that you've experienced over the years?
Oh, definitely. When I first started my channel, as I started to gain popularity and grow my audience, I was experiencing a lot of demonetization. So the big tech companies, especially YouTube and Facebook, made it as hard as possible for me to grow and demonetize me as much as they could early on. So I couldn't really make a career or a business out of it, trying to discourage me from getting out there and making my content. So they would do tricks like, demonetize my video right away. I would submit a review. By the time they reviewed it and approved it for monetization, 75% of my views had already happened. So they've been doing these types of tricks to conservatives like myself for years now. And, we're seeing the grilling and the questions being asked in the Senate. But in reality, we've heard these a lot for the last 4 years. Nothing's been done. And now we're through another election. So I think a lot of people are actually getting frustrated more than they were in the past.
Yeah, and we all are wondering why haven't things been done, considering we had President Trump in office for 4 years, and this was a time for Republicans to take action. And I think a lot of these Republicans in the Senate and the House, they didn't realize how important this is. Now, I just spoke with Congressman Matt Gaetz, who does realize how important this is, and he's a younger guy, and he knows how to use social media, and he's on it pretty frequently. And he knows that this social media influences elections, it influences young people, and also, we should have a platform where we can all talk, right? And that was the whole point of Facebook and Twitter, was a place where you could come and share ideas, and that they believed in free speech. But it turns out they don't, and they censor conservatives. It's pretty obvious. You see what they do to the president of the United States, where they censor his tweets. Like, why can't we listen to government officials? We've seen several government officials either have their accounts suspended, or we see these little information box like, oh, this might not be accurate. But we have the right to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what attracted the audiences to these platforms in the first place. It was a way to avoid the gatekeepers of the mainstream media of years ago, and allowed every person, if they wanted to have their own voice, their own individual voice with their own content. And that brought so many people to these platforms in the beginning to kind of see what people were talking about and to have a broader discussion as the masses of the people would like. And now they've kind of adopted this narrative and helped promote it in a way where if it doesn't fit their agenda and what they're trying to push, they'll censor one echo chamber while creating this false narrative on the other.
Yeah, for example, we learned in the hearing that Facebook was censoring the Stop the Steal group, quote, in order to prevent violence or civil unrest. So it's funny that they'll target the Stop the Steal group, but yet they let Black Lives Matter and Antifa folks use Facebook to create their groups and whatnot. And, if you want to talk about civil unrest, you'd probably want to take a closer look at Black Lives Matter, considering these groups, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, have been committing serious acts of violence and crime in cities across the country for months.
Yeah, and they're organizing, like you said, on these platforms. And I would argue as well that if you wanted to stop civil unrest, you'd allow more conversations and you put more things out there and censor less, because when you do start to censor the people on the fringes, it almost reaffirms their point of view, whether it's true or not, without the debate. So if someone has a fringier view and they get censored, now they're like, oh yeah, big tech's against me, I am being censored, I must be right. And it actually makes the fringes and the extremes get more extreme faster than they would if we were able to have a conversation.
Yeah, and you pointed out that we've seen these hearings over the years and nothing gets done, and Congressman Gaetz was just saying that a lot of these politicians take money from big tech, so that's why this is more of political theater and nothing's being done. But at the end of the day, Republicans are going to be totally shut out from the conversation, and they don't realize that this is going to make their efforts in getting re-elected more difficult. And so something has to be done about it, and the protections that Twitter and Facebook have, they shouldn't have those. If they're going to be going through and being acting like publishers and deciding what we can see and what we can't see, then they should be treated as publishers.
Absolutely. And they really showed their cards, especially in the last year or so. They're talking about election interference and shutting down certain articles. In the New York Post, for example, you couldn't post the Hunter Biden news as it was coming out. That's actually election interference in itself. So their goal is to prevent election interference, and that sounds nice. But in reality, their actions are causing more election interference. And it's kind of like a spell. It's like they're showing their cards, and the big tech companies are now, over the years, revealing that they're in on it. They're in on the narrative pushing. They're basically casting a spell, which would make Jack Dorsey like a wizard, which isn't that hard to picture.
Yeah.
He already looks like one.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Or a homeless
they've
guy.
kind of showed their role. They've showed their role in this whole thing. And now it's getting people really frustrated. And I think there is an opportunity, though, because I think that they're pushing this leftist narrative so hard that liberals, classical liberals, true people that are in the center left, they're not for censorship historically. So I think when we see these things getting done and the censorship being pushed, it's actually going to wake up some liberals, and we'll realize that we have more in common as conservatives with liberals than liberals do with leftists.
Yeah.
So at the end of all this, it might be unfortunate in the short term. I think there will be a greater awakening, and then these tech companies who are concerned about their bottom line will maybe start to come around, especially if the election were to flip.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are some Democrats that still care about freedom of speech, at least for themselves. But during the hearing, a lot of the Democrats were complaining that Republicans weren't censored enough, and they were upset that President Trump has a platform to tweet and share his thoughts. And considering he is the leader of the free world, you'd think that would be appropriate. Really quickly, so I've been following you over the years, and you were talking about how things have changed and how big tech has gone after you to demonetize you. Are you still able to make money online?
Yep, I do get paid from YouTube monthly. It varies. So if I do talk about the election, like last month, for example, a lot of election discussions, I haven't made much money from YouTube from that. But there are some times where if my street videos aren't that provocative or whatever their way of judging it is, they will monetize me, but it's nowhere near what I would be making if I was a normal channel, like a cake channel or a makeup channel or something. I'd probably be doing way better. Probably have a bigger audience.
Yeah.
But
or maybe if you were a leftist, maybe you'd be making more money. I have a video clip from one of your recent ones. Oh, it's from 2 months ago. But this kind of will show our audience some of the video style that you have on your channel. Roll tape.
Is that Fleccas?
No. What do you think about Trump's handling of the COVID virus?
I think he's a liar. He put 200,000 people to death for no reason. I think if he would have been straight up with the public, we could have saved more lives and opened up this country in a safer manner.
Bullshit. And he's killing more. He doesn't care. He doesn't care, and he's killing his people.
Well, tell us about Joe Biden and why he would be better than Trump.
He's not a president. I don't care about Joe Biden. We're talking about this criminal, Nazi Donald Trump.
I feel like I'm arguing with my 13-year-old that doesn't know shit.
Oh, yeah.
On TikTok.
You said Donald Trump is a Nazi. What do you mean by that?
Pretty hilarious. And the title of that video was called Deranged Dems Make Zero Sense at a Biden Event. And you saw a lot of mental gymnastics going on there. So tell us over the years, like some of your favorite man on the streets, if you will.
Yeah, so I got started a few years ago when I was living in LA, and the reason I got started was I was realizing the media was giving too much credibility to the protesters. They wouldn't interview them one at a time. They would just say, oh, everyone's mad because Donald Trump did this, or Donald Trump's taxes, or Russia, and they would kind of like attribute the motives of the protesters to be whatever they wanted to talk about. So I kind of realized early on there would be some good content, good opportunity to go talk to these protesters and see what they really think. My favorite ever is there's a girl in Hollywood Boulevard who, into a megaphone in front of hundreds of people, yelled, "Donald Trump is worse than Hitler." That was a couple of years ago. A lot of people I interviewed didn't actually vote, so they're very mad. They're upset. We have to do whatever we have to do to get Trump out, no matter what it takes. And I said, "Who'd you vote for?" And they go, "Oh, I didn't vote." So it is ironic. It is fun. But the goal of the videos is to kind of redraw the lines. I think everyone assumes it's left versus right still because of historically how politics has gone. But in reality, like we said before, I think the conservatives and liberals and people around the political center, most of the country, have more in common than those people do with the leftists. So I think if we can kind of draw a line and say it's leftist against everybody, that would be more conducive for a better conversation. And also America would do better that way. We could have real conversations. The people on the far left, the radical leftists, don't have America's best interest. They don't want to see the country do well. And they've been convinced that the country is an evil country based in slavery and evil and racism. So it's kind of like creating a future minus them.
Yeah, and then when you ask them questions, of course, they can't really explain why, because it's not true. And you're right, this is the fringe, loud minority, and so everyone needs to remember that. And I have one really important question for you. What happened to the wooden spoon?
Wooden spoon. So when I first started in LA, I used a wooden spoon. I taped a microphone to it just to kind of have something to hold the mic. And I actually have been using it less now because I'm kind of getting recognized. And the bit used to be like, oh, I'm just some guy in the street with a spoon. And they would think that they were up here talking down to me because I'm just a nobody.
Yeah.
But now I go to the protests and everyone kind of recognized me within like 10 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, I was going to ask you, people are probably starting to recognize you by now because you have a lot of followers, like millions of followers, and you get millions of views on your videos. So you are a popular guy. Anyways, we're totally out of time. It was great seeing you, and hopefully you'll come back soon.
See you soon. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.